Welcome to the Fantasy Addiction Network. Today we are talking Week 14 recap of the Jets-Dolphins game. Final score, Jets 22, Dolphins 21. Now that 21 points for the Dolphins unfortunately was not 3 Ryan Fitzpatrick touchdowns, but instead 7 field goals on 8 attempts. This game for the Dolphins, surprisingly, I think they only had 1 punt in the entire game. They just could move the ball down and get to the red zone and then just could not get into the end zone. So we'll start with the Dolphins. Looking at Ryan Fitzpatrick, he had 21 completions on 37 attempts for 245 yards. Again, no touchdowns. He also had an interception. He had 7 carries for 65 yards on the ground, so that helped you out if you started him. But man, that was disappointing. Playing the Jets, you were really hoping for more from Ryan Fitzpatrick, but no touchdowns is always going to kill you. So that was not a good performance. On the ground, we were curious to see who would get more work between Patrick Laird and Myles Gaskin. It looks like Laird is the guy to go with. He has had 15 carries for 48 yards, also 4 receptions on 5 targets for 38 yards. So Patrick Laird looked pretty decent. Myles Gaskin only 4 carries, 5 yards, 1 reception for 6. So nothing going there for Gaskin. Looks like Laird is going to end up being the bell cow. I think I've heard him described as a homeless man's Christian McCaffrey. So, I mean, from a fantasy perspective, sometimes volume is all you need. And then also with Devontae Parker, he had such a great matchup, but he left the game early in the second quarter with an injury. I believe it was a concussion. So we'll see how he progresses throughout the week, but he only had 2 receptions on 2 targets for 28 yards. So highly disappointed if you started him. Allen Hurns, 5 receptions on 8 targets for 68 yards. That was okay. Nothing from Albert Wilson, just 1 reception on 2 targets for 5 yards. And then Isaiah Ford was actually the main benefactor of having Devontae Parker leave. He ended up having 6 receptions on 9 targets for 92 yards. So not looking to rush and pick him up on the waiver wire, but it's just something to keep an eye on. And then from a tight end perspective, Mike Gesicki had 1 reception on 5 targets for 6 yards. So terrible game. What makes matters worse is of those 4 targets that he didn't get a catch on, 3 of them were in the end zone. So this could have been a much better game for Mike Gesicki. I would say that better days are ahead. This just was not his week. Then jumping over to the Jets side of the ball, Sam Darnold, a little bit of a disappointment in this one. He did all right if you started him. He didn't let you down. He didn't completely implode, but he also could have done much more for you. 20 of 36 for 270 yards and 2 touchdowns, 1 to Robbie Anderson, 1 to DT. He also had 1 interception. Nothing on the ground, 3 carries, 3 yards. From the running backs, we saw Bilal Powell get 19 carries for 74 yards, also 2 receptions on 3 targets for 14 yards. So decent day if you started him. It was an all right performance. And then Ty Montgomery also got 9 carries for 31 yards and 3 receptions for 30 yards. My guess is we'll see Le'Veon Bell back next week. So, and then I believe Powell left this game with an injury as well. So you're probably not looking at either of these guys anywhere, going anywhere near your fantasy lineup going forward. From a receiver standpoint, Robbie Anderson got it done today. He had 1 carry for 4 yards and 7 receptions on 11 targets for 116 yards and a touchdown. He was getting targeted all day. He had a couple of big passes that were either overthrown, or that he was just really well covered on, so he could have had an even bigger day. But you'll take that all day with Robbie Anderson, especially with some of the duds that he's put up. Demaryius Thomas, 2 receptions on 4 targets for 28 yards and a touchdown. And then Jamison Crowder let you down, only 3 receptions on 7 targets for 30 yards. Nothing really else going on from the receiver standpoint. Jumping over to the tight ends, Ryan Griffin had 1 reception on 1 target for 8 yards before he left the game as well. So this was just not a tight end game or really an offensive game to speak of. If you started Robbie Anderson, you're happy. If you started Sam Darnold, it was all right. Bilal Powell was all right. Patrick Laird was all right. And then Ryan Fitzpatrick helped prevent his game from being too bad, but not having a touchdown really hurts you. So anyway, we'll monitor these situations going forward, and we'll get back in other videos on this. But if you guys like this, please feel free to like and subscribe. We'll be posting content for the rest of the season and into the off season. So hope you enjoyed this video, and we'll see you in the next one.